guys again. This is Darius. I'm gonna talk today also about the games of the week, and for the game actually of the week I prepared only one, but it was nevertheless extremely interesting and complicated, and there was lots of going on. So I think even 1 hour wouldn't be enough for this game. But anyway, so I'm gonna talk about game versus Ray Robson versus Hikaru Nakamura from US Championships 2020. And in this game, I think, just kind of like as an introduction, I can say that I think Hikaru Nakamura tried to win too hard because of his opening choice and his big ambition to win it, especially that he didn't play his best chess during this tournament. And however, it shows great fighting spirit of his, and the mistakes that happened in the game were probably result again of the rapid chess, not because of skills of players, which are extremely high for both of them, obviously. So let's see what happened in this game. Why it's so interesting, in my opinion. So e4, c5, and again, usually Hikaru chooses either Berlin or like some maybe c6, g6, and stuff like that. Especially, I think he chose against Jeffrey g6, d6. Against Ray Robson, he decided to play something. I didn't see actually him ever playing, Paulsen or Khan, Sicilian. So cd4, knight d4, a6. I don't think I ever seen Hikaru playing this opening. Bishop d3, one of the most natural moves. Knight f6, short castle, queen c7. Queen e2, d6 is all theory, c4, and here we got the Maroczy pawn structure, which is considered as a source of white's advantage in many of the positions, and it is also, and usually in this type of position, or I should say, white tries to play rather positional chess than dynamic. So not dynamic, like aggressive, attack the king and so on. However, it is still also possible to basically develop very strong attack on black's king here as well. Probably depends on the mood of the player and who's playing and so on. So right now, as far as I know, the most popular move is g6, and this is the move I employed myself as a kid, when I was, maybe 11, 12 years old. I remember playing g6 like many times as black, and it's quite interesting. You develop this bishop to g7, try to play knight c6, then maybe knight d7, knight d5. For instance, after knight c6, bishop g7, knight f3, knight c6. Sometimes the idea is to play knight d7, knight d5, short castle. Maybe you want to play b6, bishop b7. It's sort of like a hedgehog. But with bishop on g7, which is considered as some small improvement. However, it can leave this d6 pawn also vulnerable, so it all depends. Hikaru decided to play knight bd7, and this is a little bit surprising. Probably it's just some sideline that I wasn't really familiar with. However, it's pretty tricky move, because idea is to play move knight e5 right now, and the postponing the development of bishop from f8. Still, you can go through g6 if you want to, but you start maybe with this move to prepare maybe knight e5. And in my opinion, the best move right now for white would be to play f4, simply prevent knight e5, and then after bishop e7, let's say knight c3, short castle, king h1, b6, bishop d2. Play such position, and as I said, it is possible to attack, to develop the attack on black king in this type of positions, even though it's maybe not necessary. However, if you play f4 already, it means that you are committing yourself to very dynamic and aggressive play. You don't have time anymore to play let's say super positional, and you know, like for instance, typical. I'll just quickly show after g6. Typical, let's say, play that could have happened. For instance, knight c3, knight f3. You see, there is no attack here anymore. Let's say knight c6. Let's say bishop f4, short castle. Maybe rook a c1, knight d7, rook f d1, knight d5, for instance. This type of play is very positional. There is, of course, white doesn't create any attack and tries to prove advantage with more strategic or more calm measures. On the other hand, if, as happened in the game, knight bd7, if you play right now f4, you are basically committing yourself to immediate, let's say, dynamic play, and probably this is what Hikaru was aiming for. He wanted a game full of fight and full of life instead of just positional, you know, battle. He wanted, this is what I'm understanding at least. He wanted to get something playable and very, very sharp. And especially with his preparation, he definitely would have had good chances here. And actually, knight bd7 actually done its job, because after f4, it didn't happen in the game, but like it would basically lead to a similar position as in the game, but with the knight and bishop on the board. Knight c3 is what the Ray played, and this is, in my opinion, inaccuracy, because after knight d5, Black manages to trade bishop for the knight, and win pair of bishops, simplify the position a little bit, and hedgehog with the more traded pieces, the more bearable hedgehog structure is, or Morozzi structure is. So f4 knight takes and anyway, right now you have to play f4. Like you cannot play just positional chess, because then you will have no advantage, because already Black would trade one pair of pieces and then fully develop, you know, the rest. And if you play positional, you are likely not gonna get anything. So f4, knight takes d3, queen takes d3 was logical. Bishop b7, b3 also is a logical way of developing the bishop. Bishop goes to b2. And the pawn b3 also supports c4, pawn bishop b2, b6, rook e1, bishop b7, king h1. Yes, and all those moves were pretty natural, pretty standard. White bishop was able to b7, white also to b2, king h1 is also logical, rooks are perfectly placed on e1, f1. And the question is, I think this is the critical position. The question is right now what to do next with Black, because you know, how to place the rooks, how to maybe place the, you know, how to solve the problem of potential aggression on the king side, and it is not entirely clear, at least at first sight, how to solve those, let's say, problems. The question is whether white wants to play e5, or maybe white doesn't want to play e5, and maybe white wants to play f5. White has lots of ideas here, and as Black, it is not easy to, let's say, to not understand, like, you know, just to pick the right plan to basically deal with all those ideas, White's ideas, same time. However, there is such a plan. Probably there's more than one. However, the one I like specifically is to play simply move rook f e8. The idea is to play move bishop f8 next, and to maintain the sort of control over the e6 square. In case of f5, always there will be possibility to play move bishop f8 or something like this, and to cover the e6 pawn. Also, it prepares action. It prepares simply for action in the center. So let's say if I analyze some move like rook e3, bishop f8, and for instance after f5, Black can play suddenly d5, and what happens is that what position opens. And Black is actually ready for such active play in the center, unlike White. After f takes e6, for instance, d takes e4, analyze knight takes. If knight takes e4, simply bishop takes e4, knight takes e4, pawn takes, queen takes. It's all pretty much forced. And here we got a position with queen and pawn for two rooks. And I don't think Black has any problems here. After the queen f3, let's say king g8. Everything is well defended. I don't see any problems here for Black. I think Black is just doing quite okay here. So this was one of the possibilities how to react to, let's say, this aggressive setup by White. Let me show another variation. Let's say rook e3, bishop f8. if here white player decides to play e5, which is also very logical, this doesn't bring much to white, because after d takes c4, b takes c4, knight g4, white's pawn structure is pretty much messed up, and actually white pieces are running into some attack with rook on e3 being under attack, pawn on e5 is hanging as well. Let's say takes. I don't actually see what white is doing next. I think after rook h3, just g6, it's completely okay for black as well. So and on e5, the pawn e5 pawn simply falls. Bishop on b7 is on the perfect diagonal. On the other hand, white bishop on b2 is completely stuck behind his own pawn on e5 and knights same time. So it doesn't lead anywhere. If rook fe8, let's say queen g3 is also a very natural move to bring the queen, put some pressure on this g7 pawn and on this diagonal. Some ideas might be knight d5 or something like this, knight f5. Simply bishop f8 solves all the problems. I don't see any problems here for black. Like if let's say e5, you can just play knight h5 with queen g4, just g6. Don't see what next. What white is doing next. For instance, bishop e4 is not possible. Okay, if bishop e4, I can always at least take if I see any problems with this knight on e4. But yeah, so this is very logical, and I'm not sure right now, but I think actually f5 will be just winning a piece or like an exchange, because after this there will be a fork. Still requires calculation. I'm not exactly sure right now, but I think it should work for maybe actually knight d6 is actually possible. So maybe this is not actually that great. However, if I don't play f5, I can play, for instance, if I want to be super solid, I can play rook f8, rook a8, I mean, or maybe just bishop g7, or maybe bring the knight to f5 also is possible. I don't see any problems here for black whatsoever. There's a number of moves that are, holding the equality. And if this suddenly somehow works, also this could be possibility. However, I'm not sure, but just make a few more moves. I don't think even in this position black has too many worries. Maybe it's slightly worse because black is down a pawn, but such activity should grant a draw eventually. This was the correct way to play here as black. Instead, Hikaru played move knight d7, which is all typical, let's say, hedgehog move. You want to bring this knight to c5, play bishop f6 to neutralize this bishop from b2. And also you run away from any ideas with connected with e5 while playing e5. But on the other hand, it allows move f5, which right now it's much more difficult to face pretty much, because if this rook goes on e8, like here, if f5 you can always play bishop f8, you just keep the pawn structure the same. And after f5 right now, it's not easy to guard your e6 pawn. Black never wants to play a move like e5 because first of all it just weakens d5 square. On the other hand, on top of that, there is possibility to play f6, knight f4, knight f5 with very strong initiative. Even if it's not possible, like e5, I can play just with my knight c2, knight d3, knight d5, or I can maybe consider, as I said, move f6 and then knight f5. So there are lots of ideas here for what I can do, and I'm not exactly. I don't really like this position for black. So the most natural move, obviously, for black is to play knight c5, and this is what Hikaru played very quickly, if I'm not mistaken, from what I remember. When I looked at the online how much he spent, how much time the player spent here on the move. So knight c5 happened, but this is this logical move, this natural move, is actually a losing one. And how can such move be losing one, right? Seemingly, like, it shouldn't be a thing. It should be quite okay still for black. But it's not. It's not good. So what is the only move for black? What black should do if not knight c5? And the answer to this is bishop h4. The point is, black simply has to cover g3 square from white queen, because if the white queen gets there to this square on g3, suddenly this diagonal is, you know, there all could be all sort of ideas of tactical ideas on this diagonal because of queen on g3, bishop b2. They work perfectly together with some mating ideas on g7. Knights can, let's say, knight b5, knight d5, or something like this. Would be, you know, extremely difficult to face for black. Therefore, you have to stop this. You have to play bishop h4 first to cover g3 square. And if the rook moves, you just go rook a e8. Try to, again, hold the pawn structure the same. Still, I believe that this position is extremely dangerous for black, and I don't think that this position is, you know, maybe, I will say this, maybe with the best, absolutely best play for black, it is still okay. However, it is not easy to play all those only moves, or like, you know, such difficult deep moves like bishop h4. It's not an easy move to play at all. After rook h3, queen d8 I thought was the also, like, you know, okay for black, but again, it's not an easy move to play. Like, there are some ideas of f6 that have to be considered. Like, all kind of sort of ideas are there for white, and it's much easier to play this position with white rather than with black. So I'm not sure whether all of this was really optimal for Hikaru to play. But yeah, bishop h4 here was still maintaining relatively the balance. On the other hand, here Hikaru played knight c5 after queen g3 was very strong move. As I said, queen belongs there. Bishop f6, right? If e5, right now, again, there's possibility to play this knight c2, knight d3, and so on, but there's also something much stronger like f6. And this knight f5, this looks simply overwhelming. This position looks just overwhelming. Knight on f5 is extremely powerful. White has very strong attack and great attacking perspectives on the king side. So bishop f6 happened in the game, and right now Ray, known for his tactical wizardry, played very strong and how to put it, entertaining move knight d to b5, and essentially white is sacrificing two knights in order to open this bishop from b2. Considering this queen on c7 is actually possible to attack, it's possible to be attacked by white knights. So a takes b5 and now knight d5. Of course, it would be a big mistake to play knight b5 because after, let's say, queen e7, the bishop on f6 will be protected. So we need to attack twice on f6 with the both knight and bishop. So I don't know. Maybe Hikaru saw it or maybe he missed it. I have no idea. E takes d5, bishop takes f6, g6, and in this position, it seems like it is nearly a mate, because, like, you know, bishop on f6, all dark squares are extremely I should put green. All the squares are extremely weak, like queen h4, queen h6 seems like, you know, it's just game over. It should be just mating, right? So here is the thing. As white, you don't have to actually really rush with this. This bishop on f6 and such, you know, weak king that black has gives white some time to basically play actually move that improves the position slightly, and stabilizes the center, and on top of that, you know, keeps all the ideas in hand. And this move is to simply play e takes d5. This was simply winning, like e takes d5, and to be honest, it's hard to come up with the ideas here for black. From, let's say, strategical point of view, strategic point of view, bishop on b7 is completely awful. It's busted, like it's not doing anything there. Knight on c5 is, you know, well placed, but like it doesn't do anything on the king side as well. So probably has to go back or something. Knight d7, right? I'll discuss the line in a moment. Rooks are very weak. I mean, like, more like rook on f8 is not doing anything. Rook on a8 also is not doing much. He attacks on a2, but like it's irrelevant pawn considering that there is a checkmate nearly on the king side. And queen on 7 is also very passive. So all black pieces are misplaced. So if black tries to sort of kick out this bishop from f6, right now white can play either rook e7 or maybe also take, and then after this rook e7. This idea is simply overwhelming. But yeah, rook e7 at first seems like is just crushing, and then f takes g6, and you know, it should be somehow winning. Should be, yeah, it is must be winning. Also f g6. If you start with this, and if knight f6, you can just play this, and after king e6, you have to move queen c3. Also, it's very nice tactical idea. You take the queen on f6, and as I said, this bishop on b7 is never joining the defense, and white simply is winning. So this move e takes d5 was simply finishing the game. Like move number 21 will be just pretty much game over in few moves. However, Ray played move queen h4, and this seemingly mating move is actually spoiling all the advantage. It's not like it's spoiling, you know, like some part of the advantage. It spoils all the advantage. It's like, I found it extremely instructive because, like, seemingly queen h4 you just want to checkmate, right? Like queen h6 just coming in and that's it. And the thing is, it's not so easy. After knight d7, suddenly knight is going to kick this bishop out. You have to move your bishop somewhere, and you can move, let's say, wherever, because if, let's say, go on this diagonal, I'm gonna just cover everything, and I'll be doing very well here as black. Probably I'll just retain extra piece and win the game. So you have to play bishop e7 here. And after bishop e7, suddenly again f6. This is what Hikaru played, so it was great defense here by Hikaru, who covered suddenly all the dark squares and made sure that he's not getting checkmated here. And black is back in the game here after f6. Knight 7, f6, black is back in the game, back in business. So this was a big mistake here by Ray, queen h4. And after bishop e7, f6, black is doing suddenly okay. So in the game happened f takes g6, h takes g6, bishop takes f8. You have to capture the rook, because otherwise how to continue the attack? If you don't take the rook, I'll play just rook f7 or something, and then knight e5, and I'll just retain extra piece, and then probably win another one. This bishop on e7 being, you know, misplaced. So you have to basically take the rook. Takes, and he takes d5. And right now the threat is, of course, to play rook e7. Seemingly white is still winning, because rook e7 is a threat. And how are you gonna defend from this? Queen d8 is super passive, it allows rook e6, for instance. But here, Hikaru played a very strong move, knight e5. And the idea is that pawn on f6 doesn't quite matter. What matters is that black covers all the, you know, doesn't allow rook e7, and puts the knight to the center, where it keeps together, you know, pawn on g6, also attacks on the queen side, the pawn on c4. So it is the knight simply belongs there and solves all the, you know, black's problems here. So rook f6 happened. Seemingly white is doing well, and indeed white is still somewhat better. White is still slightly better. I'm not sure how big of an advantage it is still, but it is still somewhat better here for white from, let's say, practical point of view only. The reason for this is that bishop on b7 is still not participating in the game, and there are two pawns for this. White has rook and two pawns, not like one pawn or something. There are two pawns for two pieces. So rook takes f8, queen takes f8, and yeah, here basically the dust settled. Like the, you know, all the complications finished, and we need to understand, right? When I was looking at this position first, I was thinking that white is still much better. Like there is still bishop on b7 misplaced. Black king is also very exposed. There are two pawns. Knight on e5 is well placed, true, but like there's lots of pawns still, and I didn't think that black should be, you know, should have enough defensive resources here. On the other hand, it's hard to make a progress here as white too, because pawn c4 is, let's say, maybe potentially weak if, let's say, bc happens. I mean, b takes c4, b takes c4. Knight on e5 really keeps everything together. Like is like a glue, like it just keeps all the position together, like keeps pawn on g6 defended, and closes the e-file. White rook cannot be activated so easily, and as we all know, the rook is especially well placed, or the most functional when it's on the open file. Right now, the only open file, F file, is actually covered, controlled by by black, queen on f8, and the other e file is blocked by the knight on e5. So the white rook is also not really doing much. So Ray right now playing move king g1 is very logical, because he tries to play move rook f1 and try to improve the rook and try to create some attack on the king side. bc, logical, capture, bishop a6, also very logical. Finally, this bishop must be improved. If this bishop is not improved, like black can simply just resign, because this bishop will be will not be participating in the game. So this bishop must join the game. And here Ray played move rook e4, very logical, defending this c4 pawn. And here was the critical position. Again, another critical position in this game. And it's not the last one. So rook e4, and in this position black has some choice, because the thing is that on c4 right now white is well guarded. The question is how to proceed as black, because b5 move is unlikely gonna be working, because I can play maybe move like c5, and if you play cb, of course I don't want, because bishop takes b5 opens the bishop. Also there is move like rook f4 possible, so there's some issues with b5. Seemingly all pieces apart from the queen on f8, black queen on f8, are well placed, they are active. Knight f5 is of course amazing, bishop on a6 puts pressure on c4 pawn. Queen on f8 though performs only defensive tasks, so it makes sense to activate it somehow. And Hikaru played move queen f5, and this move seemingly is logical, because we want to improve it and maybe create some threats of bishop takes c4, rook takes c4, queen b1 check, and then look for some perpetual or maybe some attack on white's queen, on white's king. However, it allows move queen d8, and where at least white can make a draw if white already wants, because of the perpetual, or because of the perpetual, or at least take it as some pawn on b6 or something, and it depends on how black reacts. But anyway, queen d8 gives some checks from behind, and they are not easy to be dealt with. So I try to come up with some other solution, and actually I realized that queen on f8 in this position is well placed, because it guards everything, guards the d6 pawn, while this d6 pawn guards e5 knight, and e5 knight guards g6 pawn. So basically queen on f8 is part of a very important let's say setup on the king side, where everything is well protected and well defended. So right now black played queen f5, but this was, in my opinion, not the best move. Instead, black would have played bishop c8. And the very important thing is in my opinion, to understand, is that bishop on a6 is well placed, but is not the best square for the bishop. If this bishop could be brought to f5, it performs also defensive tasks on the king side, and challenges white rook. And I think position will be totally unclear. Like if the bishop has to f5, and I don't know exactly what is doing next. Unless some rook f4, queen e8 for instance, h3, bishop f5, I don't know, king h2, king g7, like, okay, some random moves like h3, king h2, but also play like bishop h5, king g7. I don't know exactly what's plan. Not sure what black's plan is, but like for now, but I would consider at least at some point moves like knight d3. Not yet, because rook takes f5 will win the game, but maybe, I don't know, queen f2, for instance, knight d3 definitely has to be considered. At some point, knight d3 could be basically a move. Also, another possibility is to, bring the king forward. Let's say maybe queen f7, queen f6. You never know right now whether trading queens will be in white's favor or black's favor. the position is pretty much totally unclear, and anything can happen. Like anything can happen in this position. So bishop c8, I think this was one very strong move and very instructive moves, because bishop on a6 is well placed, attacks c4 pawn, but it could be even better placed on f5, where it guards everything. Yeah, so Hikaru played queen f5, which is, in my opinion, not the best move. Right now, I thought rook f4 was, a little bit more accurate. However, after g5, we would end up in such endgame, which likely would be a drawn endgame. But still, I think it is a little bit easier to play this endgame with white, let's say king f2, because white has two passed pawns connected, and it should be way easier to push them forward rather than black's pawns. Also, black's pawns are still far away, and it is not entirely trivial how black's gonna push them forward. However, to push white pawns is not a big philosophy. Just g4, h4, h4, g4, h5, king g3, and keep them rolling, right? So I think there will be some chances for white, some slight advantage. However, correct play, probably black can equalize here. Yeah, so rook f4 was probably the best chance. On the other hand, queen d8, the move that Ray played, is the most natural move. Of course, it's a good move, it's a very natural move. But after, let's say, queen f8 or something, or let's say king g7, actually, I would what was not in the game after queen 7, king g8. I don't see actually a follow-up, because rook on e4 is hanging. Maybe Ray was already kind of like quite happy with the draw. I don't know what was the time situation on the clock, but maybe Ray was kind of happy with the draw here or something. That's why he played queen d8, and rook f4 still requires some calculation of like after, once again, queen f5, rook f4 requires calculation of queen b. First of all, g5 needs to be calculated, queen b1 needs to be calculated. Of course, queen b1 just rook f1, but like there's more calculation to to be done. However, queen d is just very easy move to be played in time, let's say time pressure, because it's just throwing a check. So, but yeah, it's also very natural and it's also pretty good. So queen f8 happened, but Ray right now didn't want to make a draw. He played queen c7. He kept his queen active. It was correct. So right now, I don't know what like in this position. Of course, pawn c4 is well defended again. Bishop c8, bishop f5 could be considered still, but it's not as good as it was already before, because queen f7 is much more active than it was the same move earlier. There are ideas of rook h4 as well for white. It's not the same position. In this position, g5 was played by Hikaru, and probably in this position, I don't know. Probably either Hikaru panicked, or if he didn't panic, he overestimated his chances, because there is nothing that, let's say, if we look at this position, there is nothing that basically sort of allows black to be playing for a win. Like, if anyone who's on the defensive side, it's black who's on the defensive side. Especially that white already declined the draw with queen, coming with queen to c7. I've declined repetition of moves with queen c7. And pawn on b6 is hanging in the future. Pawn d6 is also kind of weak. Bishop on a6 is rather misplaced. I mean, it's well placed considering that he's on c4, but it's not as well placed as it would be on a 5 square. It's not easy for black to make a move here. So I don't know. G5 was a terrible move, obviously, because I don't know where this pawn goes actually. The game happens just h3, and all those lines right now, white's king is safer than black's king, because g5 just weakens the king. That's the big problem. Pawn on g6 is well guarded. On g5, pawn is not guarded at all. So yeah, like after in all those lines, that for instance, we'll see in a moment some example lines after what happened in the game and what could have happened in the game, where this inclusion of g5 move is not good for black. So the best move again was just move queen f5, and try to, you know, activate the queen. If we cannot activate the bishop from a6 right now, just activate the queen and chase our opponent's rook and try to, you know, look for some activity and counterplay. If rook h4, queen b1, of course, runs into millions of checks. So rook e1 probably has to be played. But right now, after queen f4, we are sort of guard at the 6th pawn tactically, because queen d6, knight f3 would just win the queen. And there are ideas of bishop takes c4, obviously. There are ideas of some queen d4 checks and knight g4 maybe at some point. Depends, of course, what black is doing. Because then rook a, of course, would be a checkmate if we remove the knight from e5, but like depends, of course, on what black is doing. What white is doing. If rook f1, queen d4, king h1, and queen takes c4, I don't see anything more than a perpetual check here. Like, again, queen f8 seemingly is nearly winning, but knight on e5 is so powerful it covers f7 square, and rook f7 is not possible. So probably just white we have to, oh sorry, not here, just here, it would be just a draw. It will be just a draw, in my opinion. So yeah, queen f5 was by far, you know, the best move. But this is what I'm trying to kind of like say. Like, either Hikaru panicked with g5 because he didn't like something after queen f5, or he overestimated his chances. He didn't want to make a draw with queen f5. Considering Hikaru, he's a very strong player, and he wanted to win this game. Considering especially the tournament situation, he was like, you know, like 2 or 2.5, some few points back behind Ray, so he wanted to catch up with him probably, and he didn't want to make a draw. But I think that the risk that he took here is a little bit excessive. So g5, h3, queen f5 right now, but queen f5 right now runs into just rook e1. And the problem is that in all those lines, like here, after, say, immediate queen f5, pawn on g6 is, you know, like let's say this position with pawn on g5 and pawn on h3. It can be the exactly same position if after black played move g5. In this position is a draw, but if pawn on g5, it is simply winning for white, and we'll see why in this particular line. h3, g5, just rook e1. If queen f4 is not sufficient because of rook f1, queen takes queen d4, king h1, queen takes c4, and queen d8. And suddenly, because of the open 6th rank, white rook can get to f6 square or like or something like that, and suddenly there is mating net on h6, and there is nothing black can do to stop that. Also, queen 7 rook f8 is a mating net as well. So the game is over just because pawn's on g5. With pawn on g6, it wouldn't be possible. With pawn on g5, black simply is lost. So so yeah. Therefore, this g5 move was a big mistake, and after rook e1, white is already winning here. Bishop takes c4, queen takes d6, knight f7, trying to, let's say, make his position solid. And here again, but here we go again. This is another critical position, and here right now Ray went wrong. Probably both players were already like in deep time trouble, because there is no way you could understand or like justify such mistakes in, let's say, normal play, normal game. However, here probably is move already 35, 36. So both players probably were in deep time trouble, and that's the, again, source of the mistakes on both ends. So right now, Ray played very, let's say, natural queen takes b6, but it wasn't necessary to play queen b8. And there is kind of like, if you think about it, it's kind of logical, but like during the game at the board, it doesn't seem logical. Why to give the check? Why not just take the pawn immediately? And the difference is very subtle. The problem is that after, let's say, queen b6, okay, Hikaru again probably panicked with g4. There's no reason to do this. But after, let's say, move bishop takes a2, d6, bishop e6, trying to blockade this pawn, d7 pawn, queen e3, bishop d7. Black is doing quite okay. White is still obviously better. Only white can win this. Only white can put some pressure here on black. However, it is very, very close to be drawn because of the blockade and kind kind of like lack of weaknesses. There are not many weaknesses, and black if just black stays in place, I don't see how white makes too much of a progress here. Still, obviously, white can try for many moves, but should be eventually a draw. The difference is that if we start first with queen b8, king h7, queen b6, in the exact same line, d6, bishop e6, queen e3, bishop d7, we have not king on g8 as earlier, but right next king is on h7. And rook f1 right now simply ends the game. And of course, it's difficult to say right now in the analysis. I'm not criticizing Gray, or I mean, I'm not criticizing Hikaru either. I'm just trying to analyze and be objective here. The thing is that it seems kind of like intuitive also, if you have enough time, to kick this king a little bit out of the center, and to make the piece construction with the knight and queen a little bit more vulnerable. Like with king on g8, king also supports this knight. If the king goes here, those pieces are not, they're only for themselves. They're not even guarded by the king additionally. And therefore in this line, it just shows. However, as I said, it's easy to find it over the at home when you analyze rather than during the game. But anyway, queen b6 also, like, it's a mistake which spoils big part of the advantage. But Hikaru probably also in time trouble or panicked or something like this. He played g4, which was unnecessary. I don't understand this move, but yeah, probably was just panic. Like right now, h takes g4, Ray played and is winning. Of course, queen 6 was also winning, and try to trade the queens. And there are simply too many pawns, and they are very advanced. At least after this, the e pawn is very advanced, and pawn g4 will fall as well. A pawn will also probably move forward very soon, and the black pieces lack coordination here. Black is simply lost. So, but h takes g4 also obviously wins. After h takes g4, queen d5, a4. One thing to note, that white king is extremely safe. There is no way black can do any danger to white king because of the queen on b6, which guards the diagonal in all the possible ways. No access to white's king whatsoever. White wants to simply push this pawn forward, and the game is pretty much decided already, like with some completely winning for white. Also, black pieces lack coordination, and it's just winning for white. But here Hikaru played move queen d7, and as both players probably were in deep time trouble, this move was quite tricky because it attacks both pawns. You have to decide which one you defend, which one you do not defend, and what you do. It gives some choice, room for error, right? So, and here immediately, by some reason, Ray played move queen g6, and this is very inaccurate. It's unnecessary check that Ray gave, and there was no reason to do this. Instead, for instance, g5 was completely winning. After queen takes f4, g6, and just taking the knight out of f7, attacking, continuing the attack on black's king, and this will be just simply game over. After g5, let's say knight takes g5, of course queen g6 just wins the game with the checkmate, or at least taking the knight. So g5 was just the simplest. Another winning way for white was to play a5, and after queen takes g4, just rook e8, and then basically lots of checks follow, and this is a little bit more complicated and probably unnecessary. If I would have to suggest something, just g5, because just g6, it's very, very simple and natural to play such moves. However, it was time trouble, most likely. Ray played queen g6, king f8, and right now queen f6. And suddenly after queen f6, it becomes equal again. Like, I was stunned when I was analyzing this game, like how many mistakes from both ends just because of time trouble right now. queen f6 suddenly is spoiling all the advantage, because after queen a4 I'm not clear what white is actually doing. Yes, you can play move g5, but it doesn't. It's what happened in the game, via of g6, but it doesn't lead anywhere because of queen a7 and now queen a6. Try to trade the queen, trade the queens, and basically what happens is that white is running short on a tempi relative to the line that we just discussed after queen d7, g5, where exactly the same thing happens, but already after queen a4, pawns on g6, and white is right now simply winning. So coming back to the game, king f8, queen f6 happened, and it was a big mistake, obviously. But right now, Ray had only one move that was winning, and in time trouble, it's simply impossible to play such move. Queen c2. Queen c2 defends a4 pawn, attacks the c4 bishop. It's kind of like, usually in time trouble, such moves are out of radar, because you want to look for something on the king side and try to, create some attack or tactical ideas. Instead, you just have to. Instead, queen c2 is just consolidating move that defends the pawn and backwards move. You don't look for such moves when you're in time trouble, at least. So after queen d4, also such moves like queen c2 allows checks from this side, and you need to see queen f2. And sometimes it may go. Sometimes such move as queen f2 may be out of radar. So after queen g4, just queen c5, and for instance rook e3, and again, as you guys can see, rook queen is coming back to this diagonal with on this diagonal, and covers all the entry points on this diagonal that this king can ever get checked. And after rook e3, for instance, next move, with idea of preparing, let's say, king h2, maybe rook g3, rook h3, rook g3, the game is still just decided. Like white simply, of course, rook e3 is not only winning move, a5 is also winning. There are many winning moves here for white. I thought rook e3 was one of the most instructive ones. However, the game happened queen f6, after queen takes a4, g5, queen a7, king h1, suddenly queen a6, and g6 is not coming through. So what to do? Like if the queens are traded, the game is just drawn immediately. So Ray played move queen d4, and this is a very strong move by Ray. So probably played also in time pressure, but finally the queen comes back to the center and to this long diagonal, or like not. Also, this, like most importantly, this diagonal covers all the possible checks on this diagonal to white king. And after and here it is. Okay, I should take this arrow away. Basically, what happens is that in this position, black's pieces are still not coordinated, and it is difficult to make a move for black, especially in such time trouble that probably both players were. Like the game was extremely complicated, obviously, and it's move number already 43, and considering the amount of mistakes from both sides, both sides had to be in big time trouble. So right now, Hikaru messed up by playing bishop d3, and again, this seemingly is very natural because you want to blockade this g6 pawn somehow and put some blockade like bishop g6 or something like this, and try to hold somehow. However, this move simply loses, and we'll see why in a moment. Instead, the move that was holding a draw was bishop b5, and this is completely absurd move that I don't think anyone would cross anyone's mind. Like, it's totally engine-like move that it's pretty much over the board, especially in rapid chess. It's impossible to find nearly. Like, I don't know, it's hard to even understand this move. The point is though that it covers some lines e8 square, and the difference with bishop d3, after bishop d3, this bishop is sometimes under attack. The queen has to, let's say, stay on this diagonal, or like somehow keep this d3 bishop be defended. On bishop b5, after bishop b5 though, this queen has some room to, some freedom, can move somewhere else. Let's say after rook a1, we can play queen c6. The queen doesn't have to be on this diagonal. And queen c6 also covers a8 square, so white rook cannot go there. So yeah, like suddenly black can survive this out of nowhere. Bishop d3, after bishop d3, however, rook a1, suddenly the queen has to go somewhere else to keep this bishop defended, but this allows rook a8, and there's lots of checks that white can do. And it is, yeah, the very repeated ones. And the king is pretty much exposed, very exposed, black's king. But the question is, again, how to proceed. And the mistake right now, Ray played queen c5, which is the move that again spoils the win. As I said, mutual mistakes from both sides. I mean, yeah, mutual mistakes here. Both players were probably in time trouble, as I said. Queen c5 is a mistake because after suddenly knight d6, everything is protected suddenly. Bishop on d3 is protected, knight on d6 is protected, queen on g6, everything is holding both pieces together. And in such disposition, it is not easy to make progress suddenly for white. After rook h8, okay, if queen e5, I can play for instance move like king d7. Not easy to say. Not easy to say what's going on next. After rook h8, trying to keep the h file protected. Let's say queen f7. Black wants to play something queen f1. Some analysts moves like this. Bishop g6, rook d4, queen e6, bishop e4. Suddenly everything somehow holds. I don't know how exactly holds, but like holds. Queen 7, queen c7, queen d7. It's crazy to play it like this, but like, and to believe that it can hold, but in reality it just does. Suddenly it's not possible or easy for white to to break black's defense here. Instead he could play queen d6, and after this move the game was pretty much over after rook a7, and we'll get there in a moment. I would like to quickly show why queen what white could do after instead of queen c5, and the winning move was queen a7. And this is pretty much logical because queen a7 just keeps checking, and black has no way to escape those checks. Like let's say not escape, but like to cover from the checks. Let's say queen c5 allows knight d6, right? And already there is some coordination of black pieces. After queen a7, black's pieces are misplaced. After king e6, let's say rook e8, the king goes sort of for a stroll. It was in the middle of the board. Queen b7 analyzed, queen d7, let's say king c3, queen 7, king d4, queen f4, king d5. Of course, there are lots of possibilities for both sides right now, as one of the example lines, queen e3. The point, in general, what I'm trying to say in this line is that both sides, black king is under constant pressure, is not, let's say, safe somewhere behind black pieces on g7 or somewhere like this, or like, with knight on d6 that can be kind of like well guarded with on d7, let's say. Right now, knight on d7 is badly placed, and king is open, is subject to all sort of attacks from both sides, all sides, like from here, from there, maybe from here if the knight goes somewhere. Maybe black will consider basically playing this. Lots of ideas for white, and essentially, as I checked with the engine, it's already +6 for white. So this should be completely winning. However, over the board, it still may not be super trivial, but yeah, objectively, white should be winning. And the idea in general, just to why this is winning, what and the other one is not, the difference in the king position of black's king. Here it's totally exposed. And after queen c5, knight d6, this position, for instance, it can hide behind the knights very often, and that's the main difference. So the game happened queen d6, and probably this is what Hikaru blundered, rook a7, and after this queen c8, and the game is pretty much already over. After king e5, queen e8, king f4, queen f7, king g4, queen f3, not only but sufficient. queen 7 trading the queens, and there are 2 pawns and for an exchange material advantage for white, and this is totally winning. Rook g7 just securing the pawn, bishop b1, bringing the king. Right now the current strategy is to bring the king forward, and this is exactly what Ray does. Rook c7, and finally, nice tactical idea, converting to the pawn endgame, g6, bishop takes g6, rook g7. After king f4, white wins due to the opposition. It's actually the same, or very similar at least, endgame to the one we've seen earlier in Wesley So against Jeffrey Zhang. However, in this position, I think it was pawn f5, right now it's pawn g5, but it's equally winning. So yeah, this was it for this game, and it was completely crazy, and lots of stuff was going on, and I don't know what to say pretty much. Like, what I can say is that in time trouble and in time pressure, like, everyone makes mistakes, and even the best players in the world. So all those mistakes don't take away any of their strength. So it's maybe for people who sit like in front of the computer, it's easy to see that here evaluation jumps because of this and that. But let's say from human perspective, lots of moves make sense over the board when you play them. It's just sometimes positions are so complex that they require simply more time to just jump into and to understand what's going on. And in rapid chess, even the best players make mistakes. So, but nonetheless, the game was extremely interesting. There were lots of interesting ideas for both sides, attacking the defensive for white and black. And I think there was lots of things to learn from in this game. One thing that I would like to, if I have to single out the most important thing to learn from this game, is the feeling sort of for initiative and kind of like constantly looking for dynamic options for both sides, not only when you're attacking but also when you're defending. As the saying goes, the best defense is to attack. So, and here very often the best defense for Hikaru was basically to attack, to look for counter attack. And so yeah, this I can say this. Nonetheless, the game was very interesting and well played by both players, and eventually congrats to Ray for winning this game. So yeah, that's all from me for today, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.